Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you all. I want to commend Ben for introducing his father. I want to tell you, I have an 18-year-old son, and I know exactly what Governor DuPont was saying. The anxiety of having your son introduce you. They know things no one else knows. I remind my son all the time, we have a saying in the Christie household, what's said at this table stays at this table. And it appears that Ben DuPont followed the rule if there's a similar one in the DuPont family. And I thank Governor DuPont for the honor of being here tonight for his introduction. It is like coming home for me. Delaware is a second home for me and for Mary Pat and for our children. I was telling someone earlier tonight that my son Andrew, who's 18, came to his first University of Delaware football game when he was 3 months old, sitting in our box on the home side around the 10-yard line in a car seat. The game was against Villanova. We beat him. So Andrew has been a good luck charm ever since, and all the Christie children, Sarah, who's now 15, Patrick, who's now 11, and Bridget, who just turned 8, have all spent many fall Saturdays just a bit south of here in Newark to enjoy what it was that brought their parents together. Because while I'm proud of my degree at the University of Delaware and I'm proud of some of the things that I accomplished, and Governor DuPont doing that research on my platform when I ran for student government president, that baby hasn't been rolled out in a long time. Again, you're right, the faculty didn't like the whole evaluation idea at all, any more than the teachers union likes my ideas right now in New Jersey. But the greatest thing that I was able to accomplish at the University of Delaware was convincing Mary Pat to come back to New Jersey with me. And we were married a year and a half after I graduated, not quite a year after she graduated. And, I say all the time that, people said, you got married young. I was 23. Mary Pat was 22. And I said, listen, I knew I was playing way over my head. And I wanted to get her when she was young and didn't know any better. And I think my mother-in-law and father-in-law felt exactly the same way. They knew something was going on here that wasn't necessarily kosher. And, it was years later, on the day that I was sworn in as governor, just about 20 months ago, that my father, who had since passed away, but my mother-in-law was with us that day, thank God, and she came up to me at the governor's residence where we were having lunch after my inauguration at the War Memorial in Trenton, and she came up to me and she said, I think she did okay. It was the first time she had said that in 23 years at that point. And I said to Mary Pat, if I knew that all I had to do was get elected governor to win her over, I would have gone for it much sooner. I wouldn't have waited. But Mary Pat is tonight working in an event in New Jersey for a group that she started as First Lady called New Jersey Heroes, where every month she honors volunteers in New Jersey who do extraordinary things for folks outside of their professional lives to try to help and make our state a better place. And so she regrets not being able to be here tonight, but she wanted me to pass on to all of you her thanks. As Governor DuPont said, we were just down here on Saturday, and so it's good to be back here again tonight. I know there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about tonight, and I could talk a lot about what's been happening in New Jersey, and I think, I said to Mrs. DuPont earlier that, I feel lucky. I'm fortunate to be governor of New Jersey. I mean, think about the odds. I live in a state where there are 700,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans, where we had not elected a statewide Republican since 1997. and where we still have not elected a Republican to the United States Senate since 1972, in a race where I was outspent by the incumbent Democratic governor 3-1, or over the course of his political career before the $33 million he spent in running for re-election for governor, he had already spent $109 million of his own money in the previous 2 elections for the United States Senate in his first term as governor. So he had 100% name ID. And it was a very, very daunting race. And so I feel every day that I have the chance to be governor, I'm playing with house money. You know, we are not supposed to be here. And so what that drives me to do every day is to do just what I think is right. As you know, political calculation has no part in this anymore, because I could calculate politically perfectly in my mind and still wind up losing in 2013 if I run for re-election. That's not what this can be about. It can't be about that because of the state I live in, and more importantly, it can't be about that because of the times we live in. I gave my first State of the State address this past January, and you know, I'm sure Governor Castle went through this and Governor DuPont went through this. You know, your staff comes to you with, you know, every cabinet department has something they want said in the State of the State address, right? And for them, it's like their moment to be on TV. You know, the governor's up there and says, well, in the Department of Agriculture, and all of a sudden your commissioner or secretary of agriculture is flashed onto the TV screen. They're smiling, their parents are all thrilled at home, their husband or wife are like, look at there he is, look at, you know, and they all try to send you this stuff so that you mention them, you know. And so I was getting all that incoming for my first speech, and I finally said to my chief of staff, tell them all to stop. I'm not giving the normal State of the State address. I'm not going to give some laundry list of things that everybody from the Department of Labor to the Department of Community Affairs to the Department of State is doing. I'm not doing it. That's not what these times demand. What these times demand is to give a totally different speech and a totally different talk. And so what we did was give a speech that we called The Big Things. That in New Jersey, we had an obligation, a responsibility to do the big things. And I talked in the whole speech only about 3 things. Not the regular laundry list you give in one of these speeches, 3 things. First was reducing the size and expenditures in government. Second was to reform our failing pension and health benefit system for public employees. And third was to reform an educational system that was failing too many children in our state because we were putting the comfort of adults ahead of the interests of children. And that's all we talked about, those 3 things. And a few weeks later, the President of the United States gave his State of the Union address. Now, in the Christie household, there is a requirement when you reach a certain age that you have to watch the State of the Union address with your father, whether you like it or not. And that age is 13. Once you become a teenager, you have enough attention span and hopefully enough between your ears to sit and listen and try to appreciate, no matter who the president is, whether we voted for him or not, he's our president, got to sit there and listen to that speech. So we were getting ready to listen to the State of the Union speech, and my son Andrew said to me, so what do you think the president's going to do tonight? And I said, listen, I don't know, but the problems are so huge. If he actually, this came, as you remember, right in the aftermath of the Simpson-Bowles debt reduction report. I said, you know, if he's smart, he'll embrace that report, even though there may be parts of it that he disagrees with and parts that I disagree with, and say this is the challenge he's going to place before the country, to put our children's future ahead of our own comfort. I said, if he does that, as much as I hate to say this, he'll take a huge step towards getting himself reelected. So we sat down and we turned on the speech. And interestingly, 3 weeks after I said it, you may recall, the President of the United States said, we have to do the big things. Now, I'm not saying that his folks thought it went well, and why not trot that baby out and see if it works for him? You know, reach your own conclusions. But once I heard what he thought the big things were, I realized that they stopped listening to my speech just at that phrase. So the President of the United States said these were the big things. high-speed internet access, high-speed rail, and 1 million electric cars by sometime in the future. Now listen, we could talk back and forth about whether we like or don't like that, some of that stuff, but I mean, really, like, who's opposed to high-speed internet access? Like, who goes onto their computer tonight when you get home and goes, I wish it were slower. If it were only slower, my life would be so much better. Or who gets on the Amtrak here in Wilmington going to Washington and say to themselves, if I only had another half an hour on the train, it would be so great if I could just have another half an hour on the train. I mean, this is the candy of American politics. The president didn't challenge us. Worse yet, the president didn't tell us the truth. Because he knows that high-speed internet access and high-speed rail and electric cars are a fantasy if we don't start to tame the real problems that face our country. How did we do it in New Jersey? You know, there's a profile that was done on me in New York Magazine. And you know, anytime you start working with the New York media and you're a conservative Republican in a blue state, you just hold your breath and hope for the best. And they came out with this profile, which turned out to be okay. But the headline of the article was, "The answer is no." That was the headline of the article. Now, my staff Xeroxed this headline, and they all have it taped on their door, so that when lobbyists and other folks come in and they close the door to talk to them, what's right in their face is, the answer is no. That is the only way that you contain spending in government, is to say no. You see, in politics, everybody's trained to say yes. You want to say yes. Yes is the thing that makes people smile. Can I have this? Yes. Can I have that? Absolutely, yes. Do you support this? Yes. Do you love America? Yes. Everyone's trained to say yes. That's how we got where we are. Everybody does is say yes. And then they go into your pocket to pay for their good feeling, for their yes. So to contain spending and reduce spending like we've done in our state, which from the time I came in, the budget I inherited from John Corzine, to now, we've reduced spending over the last 2 years by 9%. That's not reducing projected spending. That's taking the amount that John Corzine had in his budget when he left to where we are now. We're down 9% in real dollars in 2 years. The only way to do that is to cut everything. Everything. And in my first budget, every department of state government was reduced in real dollars, every one of them. Because I had an $11 billion budget deficit on a $29 billion budget. 37% deficit. By percentage, the largest deficit of any state in America. And you know, the Democrats were thrilled by this, of course. You know, I had one of those great transitions, you know, when you move from one party to the other. Did you replace someone in the other party, Governor DuPont? Yes, you did. So you know what I'm talking about. Castle had it easy. But, so you know what I'm talking about. They sing you a great song, don't they? Governor Corzine told me, Chris, everything's fine. Budget is in great shape. You just ride this baby until June. You deal with your budget for fiscal 11, but I left you in great shape. Oh, good. All right, I don't have to worry about that. The first week I was in office, my new treasurer came down the hallway and he said, Governor, we have a $2.2 billion deficit that we have to close between now and June 30th. This was January 30th. 5 months left, most of the money out the door, and the Democrats, of course, knew this, and so they were gleeful. And they said, this is great. We're going to get this guy to raise taxes inside his first 4 months in office. This is beautiful. This is like a twofer. This is great. And so I went to my staff and said, well, how are we going to deal with this? And we sat down quietly, privately, and came up with $2.2 billion in spending freezes, impounding funds that were already budgeted to balance the budget. And then I said to him, well, do I need to go back to the legislature for this? And this is one of the great things about being governor of New Jersey. I don't know if it's the same in Delaware, but we have the strongest constitutional governorship in America. And my staff came to me and said, you can do it by executive order. I said, God, I love this job. And so in my office, in private, we had this whole list of spending cuts. They wrote up one of those executive orders for me. They said, sign here, Governor. Signed, someone witnessed it, and it was done. So I said, well, geez, how am I going to let them know about this? So I said, okay, I'm going to ask for a joint session speech. So I went down there to talk about our fiscal crisis, to have a joint session speech. And I went down there, and they didn't know what I was going to talk about. And for the first time, we didn't release the text of my speech before I gave it. They're used to getting it beforehand so they can follow along, you know, or read it ahead of time and know when they don't want to clap. And so they got to plan that. And so we didn't give it to them. And when I got to the podium, the Senate President, the Speaker, like, where's the speech? And I said, right up here, don't worry about it, we're fine. I turned around and gave the speech, and what I said was, in essence, you created a $2.2 billion problem. You didn't tell the public the truth about it. I just fixed it by executive order. Thank you, have a nice day. And I left. Now, you can imagine the atmosphere on the floor of the legislature after I left. I mean, they were going wild. This is extra constitutional. He can't do this. This is terrible. They're calling me all kinds of names. You know, Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, all those great leaders of the past I admire so much. And next morning, this will tell you a lot about politics in New Jersey. Next morning, I was walking into the State House at the same time as the Democratic Senate President. We were walking in the door at the same time. So I decided to have a little fun with him. I said, Steve, I read all that stuff you said about me in the paper this morning. I said, so you know what? You convinced me. I think you're right. I'm going to go upstairs and rescind the executive order. I'm going to let you guys figure out how to cut $2.2 billion in spending. He looked at me and said, hey, Governor, don't go too far now. I mean, this is just politics. You know, we you did pretty well, actually. You don't go crazy. We then moved to the next budget. And when I submitted my budget to balance the $11 billion, they said it was dead on arrival unless I agreed to a millionaire surcharge. Now, you have to understand, because this is New Jersey, what a millionaire's tax is. We already have a millionaire's tax. A millionaire's tax in New Jersey is on any small business or individual who makes more than $400,000 a year. So you're saying to yourself, millionaire's tax. See, we want to attract people in a different way in New Jersey. We want to tell folks, if you're not a millionaire, but you want to feel like one, come to New Jersey, because you make 400 grand, we'll tax you like a millionaire. So we still have that tax. This would have been a surcharge above that tax that would have taken our top rate to 10.75%. The third highest rate in America, just behind California and Hawaii. And so they said my budget was dead on arrival unless I agreed to a millionaire's tax. And so I told them I wasn't going to do it, but they went ahead and did it anyway. They passed it, and the same Senate President came down, and cameras following him, walked the bill after it was passed down to my office. Very theatrical. Walked down, I'm bringing it right down to the governor and give it right to him. So my mother taught me good manners. So if you have guests coming, you put your coat on, you come out and you greet them. So I was waiting in my outer office, and all the cameras were there, and out he came. And, and he said, he handed me the bill, and I said to him, Steve, sit down for a second. I said, this won't take long. So he sat down, and I sat down at the little table out there, and I vetoed it, and I handed it right back to him. I said, I told you I was going to veto it. What do you think? I'm kidding? So I handed it right back to him. And that budget that they said was dead on arrival, without a millionaire's tax, was then passed on June 28th, 2 days ahead of schedule, with the line items 99.8% the same as I submitted them to the legislature back in March. I tell you that story because this is something that the president doesn't seem to understand. Leadership matters. Meaning what you say and saying what you mean matters. You know, the framers tried a government before the one we have now without strong executive leadership. And what they found was nobody led. Nobody led. And so in New Jersey, what we've tried to do through our budget fights, through pension and benefit reform, where we put together a bipartisan coalition to take the pension fund and the health benefit fund, which were $121 billion underfunded. Doesn't know for a second. $121 billion underfunded. And we made the type of reforms that haven't been made anyplace else in the country. We did it on a bipartisan basis, and it'll save $132 billion for the taxpayers of New Jersey over the next 30 years and make those pensions secure for the people who earn them. Now, if I waited for the legislature to do that, I'd still be waiting. So I came out with a plan. And I went around the state and had 30 town hall meetings and fought for the plan. The first place I went with the plan, which included higher pension payments by participants, no COLAs for 30 years on your pensions, et cetera, all the ugliness that needs to be done to repair these systems. The first place I went was the Firefighters Convention in Wildwood, New Jersey, on a Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. I don't know exactly what was for lunch, but it was liquid. And I went before these firefighters, 4,000 of them, and I had announced my plan 2 days before. And the guy got up to the podium and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the governor of the state of New Jersey." And it was a long walk to that stage. And they were booing me like crazy. And I made my way upstairs like that because they couldn't really see me. Then they saw me, then they really got into it. They started booing some more. So the guy up there standing next to me, he's like, "Governor, I'm sorry. You guys are, you had this little plan you put out, the guys are upset." And I go, "No, I understand." So I got out to the podium. You don't know what to do in this situation, right? So I said, "Let's try this." So I said, and they booed some more. And then I said, "Come on, you could do better than that." And they did. And finally, they kind of wore themselves out. He's just like ran out of steam temporarily. And I had a whole bunch of things planned to say, and I just decided to ditch all of them. And I just said this to them. I said, "Listen, I understand. I understand that you're angry, and I understand that you feel betrayed, and I understand that you're scared about your future and your family's future, and I don't blame you. Because for 20 years, governors of both parties have been coming into this room once a year and lying to you, telling you that you could get things that they had no idea how they were going to pay for. Increasing your benefits when they had no way to increase the payment for those benefits. And doing all of it, both parties, just to win your vote. Just to tell you what you wanted to hear so you'd vote for them. So I understand you're feeling angry and betrayed and scared, but here's what I don't get. Why are you booing the first guy to tell you the truth? See, there's no political advantage to me coming into that room and telling them those things. And so why do you think I'm doing it? Now, at the end of it, you can vote for me or not. You can kick me out in 2013 if you want. That's up to you. But I guarantee you one thing. If these reforms get passed in 10 years, you're going to be scouring the internet looking for my address to send me a thank you note. Because you're going to have a pension to collect for your family. You're going to be able to get health benefits for your wife, your husband, your children. And if that's not your cup of tea, then that's too bad. You'll just have to vote for somebody else the next time. Thank you very much. And I left. And as I walked off, we went to about a third applause. And the rest boos, which I considered a significant triumph. But my point about the story is that there was no legislator who was going to go and do that. That's not the way legislators are built. They're built to say yes. They're not built to lead in that way in the jobs they have. That's what we expect of executives. And that's what this president doesn't understand. You know, there's a great old saying that said, "A leader without followers is just a guy out for a walk." Right? And what this president doesn't understand is he lets everybody take the walk first. And then he watches. There's no doubt what our problems are in Washington, D.C. We know them. Medicare is too expensive and costs too much. Medicaid is too expensive and costs too much. Social Security is too expensive and costs too much. Our tax system is riddled with benefits for every Tom, Dick, and Harry who can hire a lobbyist to twist the arm of a lawmaker and get them to put something special into the tax code for them. And we wonder why our country is careening into a brick wall. Because no one will tell the truth. And now, just yesterday, the President of the United States make a seminal decision in his presidency. He had to decide, what do I care more about? Getting reelected or protecting the country that I swore to protect? He chose the former. Because the proposal he put forward yesterday is ridiculous. And not only is it bad policy, but worse, he knows it will never pass. He proposed something that he knows will never happen and pounded his fist on the podium while he was doing it. This guy doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that the public is getting on to the act. And what the public knows is that there are ugly answers that need to be given to them. And they're ready to hear it. Of course the polls aren't going to tell you that. The job of a leader is not to follow polls. The job of a leader is to change polls. It's to change polls, not to follow them. And if you're one of the 44 people who is blessed enough to be called President of the United States, to me, your moral obligation is to put the interest of the country ahead of your self-interest. On that fundamental test, this president has failed again and again and again. I mean, let's not forget, he is, at bottom, a Chicago ward politician. That's what he is. And that's where he was trained. And what they know there is they give things to people to get votes in return. The very same place where we started this conversation. Saying yes. Saying yes to everybody. For anything they want. In return for one thing. Gratification of the politician's ego by continuation in office. And I have to tell you, I've never been more disappointed in a leader of this country than I was yesterday by the President of the United States. And we as a people need to understand that we have to start encouraging the people who are willing to tell us the hard truths in public office. Because politicians are easy. Any of us in this room will tell you that. We look at elections and we try to figure out, how do we win? Because you can't govern if you don't win. We have to start reinforcing the right lessons in public life. Reward the people who take the courageous stands, who say the unpopular things, and who are willing to put their careers on the line to do it. And instead, what we do is to continue to reward the ones who tell us the nice answer. It's not acceptable any longer. The crisis is too deep and too severe for it to be acceptable any longer. The party's over. The check has come due. And unfortunately, we're the ones who have to pay it. Maybe we didn't run up all the bills, but we're the ones sitting at the table when the check has come. And our question is this: are we going to run into the bathroom and jump out the window? Leave the check sitting on the table for the next person who comes in? Or are we going to stand up and make a difference? See, the reason I ran for governor is because I watched this stuff in a ringside seat as U.S. Attorney for 7 years in my state. Not just bad policy, crime. Crime masquerading as politics. And I said to my wife, I can do better than this. I can do better than this. I'm going to run. would be awful now for me to become just one of everybody else. And if there's a reason why New Jersey started to get a lot of attention, I think it's because we've done something very simple. We're doing what we said we were going to do. And the awful commentary on politics in America right now is that that's noteworthy. That's attention grabbing. Oh my God, the son of a gun, he's doing what he said he was going to do. Go check him out, would you please? What is wrong with him? Do you understand the way this script works? You promise a bunch of things and then you rationalize and justify not doing them for 4 years and try to deflect. That's what's happening all over our country. And the reason why governors are so important and why I accepted to come here tonight, because the invitation came from a governor of importance who made a difference in his 8 years in leading this state, is because governors are the ones who will make a difference. Governors are the ones who can set examples for leadership for everyone by being strong and being bold and being decisive and not caring about being reelected. And I don't care. I mean, listen, I'm not a dummy. If I run, I want to win. Not that I'm not competitive, but no decisions I make will be governed by that. Because after all, what are we really arguing over at this point? I mean, I'm getting the big oil painting in the State House, right? I'm getting one of those. Amazing as it seems, I'm entitled to one of those now. I won. So, you know, what are we arguing over? All we're arguing over now is the little brass plaque, right? That's it. Does the little brass plaque say 4 years or does it say 8 years? Now, you know, when that painting gets done, when I'm gone, and God willing, I have grandchildren, you can bet on the fact I'm bringing them to go see it. Because they'll see me in my old age and they'll go, no chance this guy was governor. He's losing it. The old man is telling us stories. So I'm going to take them, and I hope I have inquisitive grandchildren who will look at that painting, verify that it was me, and then say, like, Grandpa, what did you do? What was it like? I don't want to have to say to them, well, let me first direct your attention to the little brass plaque. Underneath there, it says 8 years. That wasn't easy for a Republican in New Jersey. So let's bring your attention to that. I said, well, how'd you get the 8 years? Well, I compromised my principles. I incrementalized. I obfuscated. And I was a coward. But let me point to you again. I got 8 years. Whether it's 4 or 8, what I'd much rather say to them is that what I cared about every day in that job was doing what I promised I would do. That I wanted to once again build a state where you not only could afford to live, but that you'd want to live. That I set an example for others that real leadership matters and makes a difference. And that what you do is much more important than what you say. That what you bet your reputation on is what you should be remembered for. And I did that. And whether it's 4 or 8 years will matter less to them, I pray, than how I answer those questions. What was it like, and what did you do? If we hold all elected officials to that standard, from the school board all the way up to the presidency of the United States, America will be restored to what America is supposed to be, both for us and for the entire world. And if we don't, please do not be fooled or lulled into a false sense of security. We won't be the country we were or that we even are today. Those are the stakes. Those are the stakes. I read this week that there was a finance ministers meeting of the European Union, and Secretary Geithner went there. And the finance minister of Austria said, we don't need America coming and telling us what to do when their fundamental problems are much worse than ours. The finance minister of Austria? is slapping around the Treasury Secretary of the United States of America on the front page of the New York Times? If you need any further evidence of how Barack Obama has diminished the influence and reputation of the United States of America due to his failed leadership, you need no further evidence than to have the finance minister of Austria feel free to take the back of her hand to the United States Treasury Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we are, whether we like it or not. And unless we're willing to make the tough decisions and do the real big things, we're not going to get out. So it's up to us. It's up to the people in this room. We've got to decide whether we want to be the patriots of this generation. Do we want to be the ones who are going to make a difference? Are we going to be the ones who want to make the sacrifices that are going to be necessary to be able to build a better country that we will never see, but that our grandchildren will be able to revel in? Those are the choices. It's not about hatching political strategy in the Oval Office, because I will tell you this. It may be brilliant political strategy what the president did yesterday, but you give me a choice. I don't want a political strategist in the Oval Office. I want a leader in the Oval Office, and that's what America needs. Pete DuPont understood that when he was governor of Delaware. He understood that a governor leading boldly could change his state, and he did. And so when I got a telephone call in my office and they said, it's Pete DuPont on the phone, I'm like, get out of here. Pete DuPont's on the phone. Who's one of my friends is messing around with me from Delaware who's saying he's Pete DuPont? But I picked up the call just out of interest. And damn, it was Pete DuPont. I recognized the voice right away. And when he invited me to be here tonight and honored me to give me this award that has been given to George Will and Newt Gingrich and Steve Forbes and my friend Rudy Giuliani, let me tell you, for a kid from Jersey, this is a dream come true. And I want to tell you that every day I appreciate the great opportunity that I've been given to lead. And I know it is a gift and a blessing. And my promise to all of you is the same promise I make to the people in my state, which is I'll never take it for granted. And every day I'll do the very best I can to get out of bed in the morning and try to do something great. I have the kind of job that lets me aspire to that. And every day that's what I'm going to try to do. And having an evening like this with folks like you puts an extra spring in my step, assures me that there are other people who agree with me that this country's days, its greater days, can be ahead of us if we really are willing to do the difficult things to restore it to greatness. And I can't thank you enough for the honor tonight and for the privilege of being at least a temporary Delawarean. So thank you all for having me tonight, and thank you so much for your friendship, Governor DuPont.